Hey, how you doing? I'm John Patrick McHugh, the author of Pure Gold, a collection of short stories which is published today by New Island Press. I'm delighted to be working with Dubray Bookshops on this kind of online launch. I worked in Dubray for a couple of years and I kind of witnessed firsthand how wonderful and kind their staff are and how much they genuinely care about books. So it does feel very nice to be back working with them again just for the launch of my first book. So Pure Gold is a collection of stories, as I said, 8 stories in all. They're all set on a fictional island called the Island, and it's located roughly where Ackle Island would be located in real life. The stories are about power, they're about relationships, they're about fires, they're about self-deceit, they're about sex, they're about a horse getting into a house party, and I had a lot of fun writing them, and I care I care a lot about them. I hope if you do pick up a copy, you enjoy the stories and you enjoy meeting these cast of characters. So I'm going to read a short little extract from the book. I'm going to read the last story, which is entitled "A Short Story." Um, yeah, so we're just going to get the beginning of that story. A short story. He was the last to emerge from the changing room, a conscious choice, and he was presently deciding, stood as he was at the end of the tiled hallway between the communal showers and swimming pool, how best to disguise his horrific body, his belly, his saggy sandcastle tits. A trick he often used was to adjust his swimming cap as he marched towards the water, fingers tentatively plucking the cherry-coloured latex about his forehead. Or another ruse was to fiddle with the off-white strings on his togs, knotting and then unknotting like it was a right doozy of a puzzle. But considering today, this meeting, taped together by unseen texts and unverifiable facts, and by the understanding that he would get the shift at some stage, John figured he should garner that first easing laugh from them, from her, by racing, leaping, and bombing into the pool. A gigantic splash, and there'd be hoots and cries at this rather than at the doughy spectacle of his body and the lumps which unfolded from it like sacks hooked to an air balloon carriage. And John could happily snigger along too, because he himself had determined to be the joke. He was 12, almost 13, basically 13. John peered out at a large hall decorated by grey statues of topless women holding pots which unloaded streams of water. There was a single deck chair for a lifeguard who was not on duty. Fake plastic ivy haired itself around 4 columns and encircled the steaming but vacant jacuzzi. Bang in the middle of the pool was Studsy and the 2 girls, Karen and Neve, a pale ribbon of disturbance. With his middle finger, John picked at the grout vein between the turquoise tiles on the wall. Heady pool smells, wet coins, disinfectant, spoon-fed medicine. Through the far floor-length glass, the sky was blue and the sun was bright. They hadn't seen John yet, and he didn't want to stare. Studsy was ducking his head in and out of the water. In profile, it wasn't clear if he was in the middle of talking to the girls and this was some drowning sequence in a story, or he was just amusing himself. Studsy was never publicly constrained, and this made John jealous, though he could not articulate this jealousy to any enlightening standard. Instead, he looked upon his friend's shamelessness, his crass unshyness, as Studsy being thick. Admittedly, annoyingly, Studsy was also brave. Bravery meant the ability to yell at girls across the street, in being able to flake a rubber at the back of someone's head during class. John envied this too, and so you had to blame this obscene courage on the fact that Studsy was poor and did not own a PlayStation 2 yet. The girls' backs were to John. From their wet hair, sleeked to mulch brown and black, he could recognize who was who and who was her. No one else had a cap on, though a rule in the changing room read, "Please wear a cap." He really didn't want to stare, but there was a diamond of flesh beneath her swimsuit straps, and her skin was sallow there, like the underside of the dining room table. Words came to his mouth, and John could not speak them, so he did, softly, Neve Irwin, Neve Irwin, Neve Irwin. It was then he heard his name called. An immediate clench in his stomach, as if butted by the nub of a hurl, and instinctively John's elbows aligned with his shoulders. He barreled forward. A sign declared no running, and so he did not run, his fingers busily unravelling the strings on his togs. It felt at that very moment like the world's spotlight was angled his way, a dusty sulphur highlighting his body and its many problems, and he ordered himself to keep his head down, not to acknowledge this light, not to look at her. All he desired was for his tits to flatten like forked down mash, for his gut to appear moderately normal, for him not to slip and fall and leak apart in front of them. And right by the steps that twisted down into the pool and equalizing water, when he thought he'd reached safety, when he thought his prayers had been somewhat granted, John heard his surname thinly shrieked. So yeah, I'll leave it there because that's the opening for the final story in the collection called A Short Story. So as I said, yeah, Pure Gold is published today, and I'd be very happy if you picked up a copy. You can go onto Dubray's website, which is www.dubraybooks.ie, and order one. And there is a limited amount of these book plates, which I have defaced with my autograph. So if you order from Dubray, you'll probably get one of these. There might even be a love heart on it. So again, thank you so much for listening, and I really do hope you enjoyed the book.